A good day to you out there. I'm Dali Pascal, your host on Justice, a lawyers hangout where lawyers dissect legal issues. Just like every other shoot on Lawyers Hangout always promises to be engaging, out of this world in terms of presentation. Today we are looking at law from a very different perspective as it rubs on every member of society who has been affected and has always been affected one way or the other by the issues rubbing around the topic for discussion for today. We have in the studio one of the very renowned voices as far as medical law practice is concerned. Otherwise, known as a medical practice of law, yes, in the name of Mr. Ebenezer Ekwatu, Esquire. So you're welcome on this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Pascal.
It's my pleasure to have you on our program today.
Thank you.
You know, law as a tool of social engineering rubs on every facet and aspect of human existence, and the medical aspect of our life, medical treatment or medical engagement as it were, cannot or is not also left out. One would begin to wonder, what has law got to do with medical practice? But today we are discussing the topic, medical negligence and rights of patients, and we're privileged to have Mr. Ebenezer in the studio who is going to do justice to that topic. So let's dive straight into it, right? Now, medical law practice in Nigeria. For starters, what is your opinion on the knowledge around the law and the practice of medical law in Nigeria?
Okay, medical law as a distinct area of legal practice has to do with intersection of law and mercy. What are the laws that regulate medical practice? The medical law practitioner is not a medical doctor, is not a nurse, he's not trained in the practice of medicine. No. The medical lawyer is simply a legal practitioner who has invested time in studying the legal frameworks, the existing laws that surround medical practice. How does the law say that the doctor should do his job? How does the law say that the nurse should do his or her job as it relates to healthcare service delivery? That is basically what medical law practice is. We delve into medical jurisprudence, we look at ethics, regulation, we look at the guidelines, more like our own RBC. So they have their equivalents. For the doctors is the Code of Medical Ethics. For nurses, they have their own professional code of ethics. That is how it is for every other allied discipline around the medical practice spectrum, for pharmacists, for laboratory scientists. Now, all these different disciplines or sub-disciplines of medicine have laws establishing the practice, have laws establishing and regulating the practice. So that is what medical law looks like.
Talking as an expert that you are, I know you are one of the very renowned members of the Institute of Medical and Health Law, amongst other things. All right. Talking as an expert that you are, would like to know the regulatory agencies or the regulatory bodies as it relates to medical practice.
Okay.
In Nigeria, yes. The regulatory agencies, before we begin to look into the main issue of whether they are negligence.
Let us start with the Establishing Act.
Okay. That is perfect.
The Medical and Dental Practitioners Act established the practice of medicine in Nigeria. So when we now talk about regulatory, you now look at bodies like the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. Well, now they look at the curriculum, establishing curriculum, the course content. If you want to train somebody today as a doctor, what courses will this person undergo? Beyond that, they also regulate the practice of medicine in Nigeria, meaning that if a doctor has issue, they can, through their disciplinary discipline the doctor, which is the medical and dental practitioners disciplinary tribunal. So you have them. Then for nurses, you have the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria. Also looking out for nurses, establishing the curriculum, their training, and all that. So you don't just wake up and say, I am a nurse. The same way we have Council of Legal Education for lawyers.
Yes.
So if you want to go through the university to study law, that university must have been accredited and approved by the council to offer that course. And the course contents would have been approved. So if your university does not have the council accreditation, they cannot go. So that is how it is.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebenezer. Now, to the issues of negligence. This topic is so wide, it cannot be exhausted in one sitting of this nature. So we're looking for subsequent episodes with you now. Is that okay?
Definitely.
Okay. Now, very well. Looking at issues of negligence, there are pockets of negligent issues as far as medical treatment, medical practice is concerned. I have been directly affected, and I've also been indirectly affected, one way or the other. I give you a scenario. A friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, he is a lawyer too. At the point of childbirth, the wife went into sudden labor late into the night hours. And we have, of course, under the MBA, HMO that we use. So he was registered with this particular hospital. So maybe in the course of time, I'll call their names if he permits, and then call them out when necessary. Approach the hospital. The family was registered with our hospital. They had their HMO there. The wife did the antenatal there all through. And then she went into sudden labor at night hours and then rushed to the hospital. No doctor was on ground to attend to them. Okay. We are talking the distance of Apu to Kubwa now, because he had to, at the spur of the moment, take a decision to take the child from Apu. If you know Abuja too well, of course, I know you do, from Apu all the way to Daughters of Charity, I think, in Kubwa, where the wife now had to give birth through a CS, because according to them, the child had already escaped. So there are pockets of issues of negligence here and there. Why is it so, and how can it be regulated? First, what are the rights of let's rewrite this nation.
Let's get the facts correctly.
Okay.
Did the first hospital where her husband has his HMO,
yes,
did the hospital attend to her?
They attended to her through antenatal.
Yes. At the night, on that very night of the labor,
yes,
that she was rushed to the hospital, did any nurse attend to her?
No nurse attended to her. That no doctor was on ground to attend to her, and that they cannot attend to this now. He should go and look for money. Or they are even advising him to rush the child elsewhere.
Okay.
While also making calls to the doctor, who, according to them at the time, was somewhere in Barin.
Okay, we need to distill the facts.
Okay.
There's a difference between issues of negligence and patients' rights abuse.
Okay.
So I have to get it right.
Okay.
Firstly, what is negligence? Medical negligence is basically the failure of a healthcare professional to exercise reasonable skill and care in the course of treating a patient.
Okay.
Now, I will break that down. And what it means is that a fresh or young doctor just graduating from the university, doing his housemanship, just graduating from medical school, doing his housemanship, there is a level of expertise he's required to have.
Very well.
Different from the expertise of a consultant who has done this job for 30, 40 years. Now, if a consultant is attending to a patient, there is a level of expertise that is required of that consultant. You have put yourself out as a consultant, not just putting yourself out. You have worked, gathered experience over 10, 15, 20 years. You are a consultant. Now, there is a level of expertise that is required of you. So, when attending to a patient as a consultant, if you fall short or below that level of expertise in attending to that patient, you will be adjudged to have been negligent. Now, for a young doctor just fresh from medical school doing his housemanship, there is also a level of expertise
As expected.
Now, you do not expect him to have the experience of a consultant of 30 years or 40 years. That is opposite. Beautiful. So, when he is attending to a patient, if he falls below the expertise required of him at his level, he will be adjudged to have been negligent. That is on one hand. On the other hand, that young doctor, where he gets to the edge, the end of his knowledge at his level, the right thing, the appropriate thing to do is to refer the patient. When he now fails to refer the patient and continue at your wit's end, here all the knowledge you have your knowledge, your experience cannot handle this matter. What you are required to do is to refer. At that moment, if you continue to treat that patient and anything goes wrong, you will be held liable for being negligent. Now, that's basically from a layman's, because here we are not talking technically. From a layman's angle, medical negligence is the failure of the healthcare professionals to exercise the required or reasonable skill and care in attending to a patient. Simple. But before you can prove negligence, there are other attachments.
The ingredients that...
Yes. So one is that you must prove that this healthcare practitioner or professional owed you what we call duty of care. Meaning that the healthcare professional, it could be a doctor, it could be a nurse, it could be a lab scientist, it could be, so not just because most times when we talk, we restrict our discussion, not restrict per se. When we mention medical negligence, people tend to limit their understanding to, okay, doctor, nurse. It could be any healthcare professional. So you need to prove one duty of care, that the healthcare professional owes you a duty of care, a duty to care for you, meaning he owes you a duty to watch out for your good as his patient. One. Two, you need to prove that he has breached that duty of care. Three, you need to prove that breach, as a result of his breach, you were harmed. So there's duty of care 1, there is breach of duty of care 2, 3, there is harm. You, the patient, you have suffered harm. 3. Now 4 is what we call causation. You need to also prove that because he breached this duty of care, that your harm is linked to his breach of duty of care. So where there was duty of care and where there was a breach, and for whatever reason there was no harm, you might not ground a claim for negligence.
Okay.
There has to be harm, there has to be causation. So you will prove 1, duty of care, he owed you duty of care. You will prove 2, that he breached that duty of care. He did what he was not supposed to do, or he did not do what he was supposed to do.
And these are in the event that you go to.
Yes.
But are there preliminary things that one can do briefly?
Okay.
Or even the court process?
Well, I wouldn't want to jump the gun, but let's look at it this way. We are dragging me to dispute mechanism, not a dispute resolution. God help me now.
The ADR as a tool.
So redress mechanisms.
Okay.
How the patient wants to seek redress. 1, there are stages of redress. We would have what we would call the management redress stage, institutional redress. That is the healthcare institution, the healthcare facility where the incident happened. You can look for the head, that's the CMD or the MD, talk. So if that administrative redress works and you are satisfied, it ends there. Then there is professional redress. The professional redress is reporting to Medical and Dental Council. Then there is the legal redress, which is now going to courts. So these are the stages.
Very much.
For reporting to Medical and Dental Council, you don't just go there and start talking. The procedure is you bring your complaints in form of an affidavit, in an affidavit form, meaning you go to court, swear to an affidavit stating the facts, what happened to you, the hospital, your card number, your name, the day you were admitted, everything that happened to you. Then you file it as a complaint before the Medical and Dental Council.
You agree with me that this has been very revealing and eye-opening. We'll go on a very short break. When we're back, we'll look at rights of patients on LJE. Stay tuned.
At LJE Nigeria, we are committed to ensuring justice, equality, and accountability. Reporting a violation helps us to protect rights and uphold transparency. In this short guide, we'll walk you through how to report a violation on our website. Simply start by visiting our website at www.ljenigeria.org. From the home page, locate the Report a Violation option in the main menu at the top. Once you're on the Report a Violation page, you'll be prompted to select the type of violation you are reporting. This helps us categorize your report for faster and more effective handling. Next, fill in your details. It is essential to provide accurate and clear information so that we can follow up effectively. Once you have completed the form, simply click Submit. You'll receive a confirmation message that your report has been successfully submitted. Your report will be reviewed by a dedicated team of experts and will treat all reports with the utmost confidentiality and work diligently to ensure a thorough investigation. If you have any question or need assistance during the reporting process, please don't hesitate to reach out to us through our contact page. Together, we can make a difference. Visit www.ljenigeria.org to report any violation and join us in upholding justice and accountability.
You're welcome back from that very short break. Before the break, we were talking about issues of negligence. We looked briefly at redress for complaints, how to go about complaints, or what to prove in the event that there is negligence on the part of medical practitioners and all of that. Of course, I would say the topic or the discussion has been quite revealing, but it's not very exhaustive because of how broad the subject matter for discussion is. And like we've said, there'll be other episodes for that. But for now, let's look briefly again into issues or let's look at the rights of patients. The right that patients have, and as far as medical and health law is concerned.
Okay, we would say that patients' rights are those rights that guarantee transparent, quality care and safe care for the patients, as well as respect for the dignity of the rights of the patients. So a patient has a right to life to start with. A patient has firstly, we need to understand that patients' rights in Nigeria are not contained in a single document.
Okay.
So I would want to use this medium to appeal to our legislature, the federal legislature, and also state houses of assembly to look at enacting a Patients' Rights Act for the federal, patients' rights law for the states, so that we have all our patients' rights in a single document. We have some of them in our constitution, specifically Chapter 4, which we call fundamental human rights, because the patients are first and foremost human beings. So those rights apply to them, and there are plethora of decided cases in that regard. 1, 2, some of them are contained in the National Health Act 2014. Some are contained in the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act 2017. For the states, the Lagos state has a few laws that have highlighted some patients' rights or has some patients' rights in them.
Not to cut you, sir, you will continue from where you are now. It's amazing how Lagos has gone ahead.
Lagos
and acting a lot of things in Nigeria.
Lagos is far ahead.
It's amazing.
In terms of legislative advocacy. Lagos is far ahead.
I agree with him.
So
even in our courtroom practice, Lagos
State is far ahead. So I must give that to them, and we encourage other states to borrow a leaf from them and see how they can try to play a catch-up. Lagos is far ahead. So the rights of patients, you have a right to life. A patient has a right to freedom from torture. A patient has a right to informed consent. A patient has a right to information. I'm just listing them. Maybe in subsequent episode, we can take them one after the other. Each of these rights can take an episode. So if time permits, we can do all that.
Right.
A patient has a right to informed consent. A patient has a right to privacy. A patient has a right to his medical record. A patient has a right to refuse treatment, to decline treatment. Now, this right is funny because the law is, if a patient declines treatment now, the patient has a right to come back to you and say, now I have continued my treatment, and you as a healthcare professional, you cannot deny him that treatment. Because Section 20 says that, Section 20 of the National Health Act provides to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, that hospitals or healthcare facilities should not deny, refuse patients treatment in emergency situation for any reason.
Okay.
They should not refuse treatment, patient emergency treatment for any reason. Now, I usually stress this fact. That does not by any way state that patients should receive free treatment. No. So we need to balance that. You don't have a right to free medication.
Yeah.
You do not. It's not your right as a patient.
Except, of course, the government guarantees.
Yes, where the government subsidizes, where the government waives. But as a right, you do not have it under our laws. However, you do have a right to receive treatment in emergency situation. For the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act 2017, Section 1 of that act provides that patients have victims of gunshots specifically should be received and treated adequately by hospitals with or without police reports. Okay, now that was to waive the issue of insisting go get a police report before you run around to get a police report. If you lost the person, beautiful. So that's one. Then Section 2 now says that such patients should be received and treated with or without initial deposit of funds. That does not in any way imply a waiver for treatment. So we need to get that corrected. There is no right to free treatment except where government is running such a program. A patient has a right to lay complaints where you are dissatisfied with treatment you have received. There are appropriate channels through which you can complain. We talked about it a while ago before we went on break. The patient has a right to observe his or her religious practices that provide psychosocial support for the patients. Then a patient has a right to clean, safe, and healthcare environments. A patient has a right to the confidentiality of his medical record. So you cannot give Mr. A's results to Mr. B without express consent from Mr. A.
That is where issues of data protection also.
Yeah, it comes in.
One rubbish.
Yes, not just that. A lot of Nigerians violate this right without even knowing, particularly house helps, where people are engaging house help. This house help, let's say she's 20 years, she's already an adult. She's no longer a minor. You subject her to test, the real test, fine. Even employers of labor, you subject the person to a test, fine. Then you now direct the lab to send you the results directly,
which is wrong.
Now, that is a breach of the patient's rights to confidentiality of his medical record. So what you are supposed to do, two things. One, let the patient sign expressly consent form authorizing you to do that. One. Two, let the hospital produce that report, truth of it. send one to the owner of the resort first. In fact, they should give the result to the owner. If the person sees his result and likes it and feels he should share it with you, the person will come and give you his or her results. Because if issues are raised around this, a lot of healthcare facilities will be liable, including those employers of labor. Their intentions are good. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule.
Yes.
Issues of public interests. So, like issue when we had the
Corona, all of that,
issue, Ebola issue. If someone has been tested and the ailment it has is going to pose a threat
to the people around,
a lot could be raised regarding the results and all that. So the other exceptions, court order, where the person gives express consent and all that. So these are a few of the rights of the patient. I forgot to, a patient has a right to information. This is very key. Now, the law is that information should be given to the patient to the best of ability of the healthcare professional in the language the patient understands. That means for you as a doctor, when communicating with a patient, you have to tone down on your medical jargon. You have to explain in such a way that the patient should understand. Now, what information are you giving? You are giving information as to the nature of the ailment the patient is suffering from. You're giving information as to the cost implication, how much is going to come. You are giving information as to the different treatment options available, not just the treatment option your facility can provide, the different treatment options available. You are giving information as to the side effects, the probable side effect of each treatment option. So if in a course of treatment could expose the patient to the risk of going deaf on one ear, you let the patient know. Then use another information where you have given all this. If you need to give him the patient information as to his right to decline that treatment. Now, this right to information is tied to right to informed consent. Informed consent is where the patient has now processed this information that he or she has understood the cost, the probable side effects, everything. Then the patient now says, I agree. Go ahead. One last right, the patient has a right to transparent billing. Open bill. So not when you not when you finish treating, at the end of 2 weeks, you now come and slam the patient with a bill of 10 million. No. As the treatment is progressing, you give the patient the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ebenezer. It's a humbling experience for me. One, because you here handed me my certificate as member of the Institute of Medical and Health Law, and then we are now sitting to discuss issues of law, and it's revealing and it's humbling. It's my pleasure once again, Mr. Ebenezer.
Thank you.
So to our audience out there, the question would be, how is your doctor treating you? How is your nurse treating you? And vice versa, how are you treating them? Just like you have rights, they also have their rights. We have looked briefly at the rights of patients today. Maybe subsequently we'll look at rights of medical health practitioners, because they also have rights. They also have rights. And then we'll also be able to look at life scenarios, life experience, life stories of issues of negligence that are happening in many of our healthcare facilities. That being said, may the odds remain in our favor. I remain your host, Dali Pascal on LJE. Do well to follow us on all platforms, LJE Nigeria. And it's a wrap.